Hello Mayhem Makers, Mindy with Quilting Mayhem, and we're back with Queen of Diamonds. So I told you I'd show you how to machine stitch your pieces together, and we're in kind of that final step. I'm going to be using a zigzag stitch with some monofilament, which is a clear thread, to put my pieces together. So I want to show you how I do it, and hopefully it will work for you too if this is the route you're trying to take. So some of the key pieces as you set up your machine, it is very important to make sure you set it up correctly for the best success. So we want to use an open stitch plate. This is a 9mm stitch plate for my machine. I have a Bernina 7 series, and today I'm going to play with the 790 Pro. So I'm super excited because it has the laser. Your machine may be a 5.5, it may be a 7 if you're using a different machine. Whatever brand you have, just make sure you have this open stitch plate. For that zigzag, or whatever they would call for a decorative stitch for your machine. Put that in your machine. Now, my favorite foot for this is the 34D. All right, so what I love about this guy, we're going to see if I can show you, is it has these kind of crosshairs in there. So it shows you exactly where the needle is going to kind of line up. I love the line down the middle. I use this for foundation paper piecing and English paper piecing when I'm doing kind of the sew it together on my machine because of that guideline. That will show me right down the middle of what I'm trying to stitch together with that zigzag, and it's a nice open foot so that stitch can go as wide as I want it to go, or at least up to 9mm. All right, so this is my favorite, but you may have something different. So you may have a 20 or a 1, just any open foot so you can see what you're doing. You want to see where that stitch is going to land so that you're making sure that both of your pieces are joining together. And then of course I have monopoly with a net on it. So this is a thread net and this is a clear thread. So it's going to be hard to see it stitch as I go because it is clear. And there are people love-hate relationship with this thread. I happen to love it. I don't usually have problems with it. You just got to know how to work with it. And so we're going to show you how to set up the machine so that this behaves nicely for you. So be right back. Hold on. All right, so I'm going to flip you guys around and show you some settings on the machine. All right. Here we got the lovely 790 Pro. What we're making sure, so stitch plate, you go in there and make sure that it knows that it's the open stitch plate. All right. If it thinks it's the single stitch plate, it will not zigzag for you. And then make sure you have the proper foot selected. We are using the 34D, so it has this lovely green check mark. All right. That way the machine knows what's going on. Now, we are going to select a zigzag. I'm going to tighten it a little bit. I'm going to probably bring it together. We're going to play with it a little bit as we stitch. But the biggest thing I want you to know right here, that thread tension. So if you have just a spin dial on the top of your machine, just roll it. But we're going to go like super low. Like you want that tension as loose as possible for this. Whoops, as I push the wrong button. Fat fingers. All right. And then we'll thread this clear thread. All right. So I'll be right back. All right, I'm going to see if I can show this off because this just, oh my gosh. So you can kind of see the thread here. We're going to set this up to thread the needle because this Bernina Pro has the auto threader now. And it actually threads the needle. I know it's the weirdest thing to be so excited about, but with monopoly, especially because it is so clear and it's like trying to work with fish line. It is near impossible to try to thread in the needle on a good day. So for the machine to be able to do it for me, magical, just tickles me pink. So I'm going to go grab the block and then I'll show you the next part. So hold on. Okay, so we'll reposition you, see if we can get this going. And it really doesn't matter where you start with this block, all right? Because in the end, it's all going to be stitched together. But I would suggest having a method, either working from the top to the bottom, outward, from the center outward, but have a method so you get it the right size in the end, and it's not too gappy, it's not too tight, all those kinds of things. But just be consistent in what you're doing so that your block will come out in the end. All right, so let's pivot so you can see. All right, so I'm just starting at one end and making sure everything lines up. Get whatever schmutz. Now remember, this is on a fusible stabilizer. It's gonna live in this block permanently, but it's a really lightweight, so I'm not worried about extra bulkiness. It's actually going to give it a nice stability. And so I'm making sure all my pieces are lined up the way I want. I'm just going to start at the beginning, and I have the line down the middle where I have these two pieces meeting, and I've actually undone the 3/8 seam allowance on that outer edge because I'm going to need to stitch that sashing to it. So I've undone all the edges. So I have raw edges out here that'll be ready for the sashing to be sewn on later on. Then we're just gonna start and turn that laser on because I want to see where everything's going. And what I love with this laser is it actually shows you where the needle's gonna go. So you can be guided as you go in where each stitch is going to land. So I'm just going to follow, keeping that red line. Oh, it's being a little fussy because monopoly is clear. I may end up turning off my upper thread sensor because it has a hard time seeing it until I get to the join where I'm going to pivot and then follow this next seam. We're just making sure everything's laying out. And the nice thing with this fusible is if you need to kind of peel it up and readjust as you go, you can. Because you don't want too bulky of a seam, and you want everything to meet the way it's supposed to. And we're just going to keep going. And I like that I have the D foot on here because it's helping pull that fabric through evenly. And I'm just going to the end and cutting. Here, try to... Everything's fused, but I still want to make sure nothing accidentally comes off. So I don't know if you can see it. Probably not. I mean, it's clear. And that's the nice thing about the monopoly is you can't really see those stitches, but they're down. And so as I go, I just readjust if I need to any of these pieces to make sure they're fitting the way they should and laying the way they should, because it's kind of hard as you're trying to do the whole thing on one big piece of stabilizer. As you can see, like this one's decided to come off, to make sure they lay right. So feel free to, you know, shift and move them around as you go so that everything is that nice diamond shape when you're done. So we'll go back. All right. So hopefully that answered your question, but I'm just going to keep through all these different pieces. Here, we'll show you. So there's really no rhyme and reason. So I did this here, but you know, like these, I may have to come do some funky thing to try to do as many as I can without starting and stopping, but you may end up with some where you're just short lines and doing short starts and stops. If you do, just do a little tacking stitch. Mine is set up to tack at the beginning, and then you can do a little not tacking stitch at the end just so they stay secure. But in the end, I mean, it's all going to be fused, stitched, and then quilted. So I'm not super worried about using this thread or doing this method because it has essentially 3 different ways that's going to keep it together in the end for the quilt. So I hope that answered a bunch of questions. I hope that maybe helps you out if hand sewing just isn't your jam. Or yeah, you know, whatever is your need and desire for doing it this method. If you have questions though, please reach out to us, contact us. You can email info@Quilting Mayhem. You can come to the store, call the store, message through Facebook, Instagram, all those kinds of things, and we'll gladly help you out. Otherwise, have a lovely day and keep on stitching.